Hey guys, welcome back or welcome to my channel. It's your girl Little Latina coming at you with another video. And as you can see by the background, I'm in a very different spot. This is not my regular video recording area. I'm out here in my deck. It's a very nice day and I just wanted to kind of switch up the scenery. I also have my little birdie here, got a little Lannister. And for today's video, I just want to give you guys a heads up. I don't actually have any notes for this video. I usually kind of have like little pinpoints when I make videos of like exactly what I want to say. But this video is going to be a more natural, free-flowing video, so hopefully that doesn't show in this video. So today's video is basically going to be talking about being alone and loneliness and the difference between the two and why it is okay to be alone, why it's okay to not have to be surrounded by people all the time, and how you can feel comfortable being alone and how you can feel comfortable being by yourself and not constantly surrounded by people or having to be around people to feel safe and content. And I feel like a lot of people who go and hang out with other people all the time and are never alone have a fear of loneliness, because there's a difference between being alone and being lonely, because you can be physically alone but not feel lonely at all, and you can be physically surrounded by a whole group of people but still feel very lonely on the inside, and that is two very different feelings and two very different aspects and perspectives of life. Some people feel like they have to be interacting with others all the time. They don't know how to be alone because either they're afraid to be alone because they don't like themselves when they're not around other people, and they have to actually deal with their own reality, which I feel like is something that a lot of people use social interaction for. It's a crutch to not have to deal with your own emotions, to deal with your own reality, because for a stretch of my life, that's what it was for me. I would hang out with people solely for the fact that I didn't want to be by myself, because if I was by myself, that meant that I actually had to deal with my own emotions and deal with my own reality and actually have all these types of thoughts that I just didn't want to entertain, because these were thoughts that were constantly in my subconscious and that were always there. But if I was busy hanging out with people or just not paying attention to that, then I wouldn't have to actually acknowledge the fact that I was feeling this way and thinking these thoughts. And that ultimately did not help me at all in the long run. It would have been a lot easier for me to just stay by myself and to really figure out what was going on mentally and fix everything, as opposed to just avoiding all of it entirely and just not even wanting to interact with those types of feelings, because ultimately in the end it only made it worse by avoiding it and confronting those feelings and actually taking the time to heal myself alone and not having to use other people as a crutch for those emotions and those feelings that I had ultimately was a much better choice. So I find that a lot of people, at least in this generation, or a lot of people that I know personally, have a lot of issues mentally, a lot of doubts, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, and they tend to hide that and they tend to avoid confronting that side of themselves solely because that means they have to actually acknowledge it, which is very difficult. It is really hard and very tiring and draining to actually have to acknowledge those emotions and to actually face those emotions face on, face those thoughts, and to learn how to combat them, how to get over that. It's a really challenging and a long process that I'm still to this day working on, so it is not easy at all. Having to deal with any type of depression or anxiety or any type of trauma, anything like that is very challenging. So it is just natural for us humans to want to avoid any type of pain. So it's completely normal for us to just want to avoid all of that, because it's just not fun at all. But at the same time, it is very necessary to heal and to become a more fuller, more complete version of yourself, to go ahead and actually face those emotions and feelings and trauma and just learn from it, learn from the experience, learn how you can grow from it, because it's not a blessing, it's a lesson. And that is basically just my motto in life. Once I adopted that thought process, it became a lot easier for me to realize that any type of negative things that happen to me, anything that I perceive as negative, any type of bad things that happen to me in my life are solely just a lesson for me to grow from and for me to become a better, more well-rounded person. So ultimately, anything that isn't a blessing is a lesson, okay? Always remember that, no matter what, okay? No matter what it is, no matter how bad it is, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a lesson behind that action. action or behind that moment in time or behind that trauma or behind those thoughts, there's always a lesson behind it, and you just need to understand that and need to really grasp that concept. Because once I really grasped that concept, it became a lot easier for me to just take things as they were and not have to change things, not have to fight things, not have to really dislike myself for certain things. Like, I'm just like my little birdie, little baby birdie. He's not even one yet. He's so cute. He turns 1 in May 2nd. No baby. He loves to go on my head. I feel that for a lot of people, being alone is a struggle simply because they actually have to deal with what they're feeling and how they feel about themselves. And I know that's pretty challenging for people that don't really like themselves too much, for people that have a lot of negative feelings, for people that have a lot of trauma. That's why a lot of them will also go to other substances to numb themselves from those feelings, to really run away from that type of trauma, to run away from any of those negative feelings. And that's basically what causes that loneliness, because on the inside you know you're not the way you want to be, and you have this law of dissonance where you're just constantly running away from yourself, pretending that you're happy, pretending that you're fine, pretending that everything's okay, when in reality you are feeling so lonely, feeling so empty, feeling so depressed on the inside, but yet you're acting like you're fine on the outside just so you don't have to deal with your actual emotions. And that is so draining and so tiring and so toxic, and it is not healthy at all, and it will not help you in the long run. You need to be able to spend time alone. You shouldn't just be worried about other people all the time. It is okay to be alone, because I know society has kind of programmed us to believe that being alone isn't cool, that if you're someone that's alone all the time, you're not worthy because you're not constantly socializing all the time. Like, you are still worthy no matter what. You don't have to be out all the time. You're not missing out on anything, because I know if I'm ever by myself, I would used to think a lot, like if I was alone and I wasn't hanging out with people, and I would see people hanging out on social media, posting it on Snapchat, posting on Instagram of them hanging out, that I was missing out on something, that I wasn't worthy, that people didn't like me because they weren't hanging out with me, and I would have these horrible negative thoughts, and that is just not true. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being alone and not having to spend time with people and not having to socialize with people all the time, because a majority of the time when these people are hanging out, it is not as entertaining or as fun or as cool as it really looks, because if it was actually that entertaining, they wouldn't even be taking pictures in the first place. So I don't want people to ever feel like just because you're not socializing with people or you're not hanging out with someone that you're missing out. You are not missing out on anything, because ultimately self-improvement and learning how to handle your emotions, learning how to deal with your emotions is so much more important than just hanging out with people. At the end of the day, you are the only one that you have, and it is so much more important to be able to understand yourself than it is to know how to just sit around and hang out with people, because it really isn't as entertaining as it looks. And I know for some people it is kind of hard to break this programming per se, since from a young age, if you ever had social media, you were always pushed the idea that you had to be out with people, that you had to be out doing something. If you were just sitting by yourself at home, you were a loser. If you weren't hanging out with people, you were lame. Like, we've had this idea ingrained into our psyche for years upon years, when it simply is just not the case. So I don't want you to ever feel like you have to be out with people. I don't want you to ever feel like you have to be doing something just for the sake of doing something, so you don't have to be alone, or just so you don't have to be sitting at your house just minding your own business, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. This has just been a construct that has been ingrained in us for absolutely no reason other than the fact that it just promotes spending money, boosts the economy, whatever you want to call it. So there's nothing wrong with hanging out, but if you use hanging out and socialization as a crutch or as a way to avoid your emotions, then that's when it becomes this negative toxic cycle where it's like very pointless and pretty detrimental. So some ways that I learned to overcome this kind of programming that I felt like I had to be out all the time was that I would spend a lot of time working on myself, whether that be doing yoga or working out or meditating. I would just do things that made me feel good. I would also do skincare. I would also like take care of my hair. I would dress up nice. I would just do things that made me feel very comfortable. Things that I really enjoyed, like drawing. I really like drawing. I do that a lot. I taught myself to play piano. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials, so if you don't know how to play any type of instrument, YouTube will have it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you only have yourself, because everyone leaves you eventually, either through death or through their own accord. So as long as you know yourself and you know your feelings and you know your worth and your value and you feel comfortable in yourself, then you will be able to make it in life, and you will be very comfortable and very confident in living life the way that you want. But that is basically the conclusion of today's video. So hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully this video helped you out in some way or made you feel a little bit better than you were before. So if you liked this video, if you found value from this video, please do leave a like, comment, or subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it, and it would help boost this video in the algorithm so others will have the opportunity to see and hopefully learn something new or something useful from this video. But thank you for watching, and have a beautiful day.